Here we are. So how is going? Any question about what we are doing? If you have some doubt, tell it before, not at the end. Today, we will speak about a very important thing in the vector, this typography. Of course, you know very well what is typography. Typography is the art technique of arranging type to make written language legible, readable, and appealing when displayed. Do you know the difference between legible and readable? Never studied this? No idea? Okay, we will see together. Legible is defined as capable to be read and deciphered. So even a very difficult thing, if it's possible to read, is legible, a very complex word. Readable is something more, is when something is possible to read and understand. So it depends a lot on what is written, how is written. This subject is very important because if you look at several statistics, but they say that normally in website, 90% of the information is delivered by some word written on the screen. So it becomes extremely important to write things in the screen in a proper way. The bad news is that there are no real rules about it. As usual happens in design, is a mix-up of different things. And we must learn different things and then apply equilibrium to what we do in order to achieve the results. And of course, the results strongly depend on what you are writing and who you are writing to. So it's not so easy. First of all, we speak a lot about fonts. We must make a difference when we speak about fonts. We have typeface. Typeface is the appearance of the letters on the screen. So it's only a design thing. Font is the file that you use to make that happen, and is the file that contains all the information about drawing a letter. And normally the extension is TTF. Perché ridi? No, ti vedevo, c'è qualcosa. To make an example, credevo di aver fatto qualche stronzata. Typeface stays to font as music stands to MP3. MP3 is a file format, music is music. We must learn the characteristic of the font. The characteristics are, first of all, the vertical dimension. You see, ascender, cap height, descender, X8, and baseline. Baseline is the line on over you write. And then there are some special things, like this is called a serif, this is called descender, ascender, and all of this you must study and have an idea, because as we will see today, there are some implications of how we use this characteristic of the font in order. Ragazzi, però se seguite la lezione è meglio, perché stare a fare altre cose. No, perché sennò potete stare al bar a fare le altre cose. Ok. Ah, perché è molto è difficilissimo parlare a gente che sta facendo altro. Here is another, resume of all the characteristics of a font. Let's look at some from this. For sure, you know what is a serif? Everybody knows what is serif and sans serif. Serif is when the font has this kind of elements at the end and at the beginning of the font. So these are serif fonts. Garamond, Times, Libre. Sans serif has nothing. At the beginning and the end of the line, there is simply nothing. Somebody says that sans serif are more easy to read than serif fonts. This is simply not true. In all the analysis done, the formal analysis done, seen that there is no real difference between serif and sans serif. Some fonts are more readable than the other, but it's not due only to this. Then you have slab serif, or when you have the serif with this big block. This is very good for the one I told you before are good for reading, and these are good for corp optical. This is very good for reading in a short amount of text. When the letter is very complicated, it's better not to use when you have a large amount of text, because it's very confusing and make things difficult to understand. Then there are some special characters that must be used with some caution, and because they take the attention of the customer very much. For instance, I love the Bauhaus. Impact is very nice. Stencil is very nice. But you should use for a short amount of text. And then there is this script. Script is something that goes similar to handwriting. In fonts, decision about fonts, there are some strange things. What do you think about Comic Sans? Have an idea? You know Comic Sans? Very cheap. Any other? You would be surprised. I like it. It's a very readable font, but it came out, I don't know why, this idea that designers do not like Comic Sans. And sometimes they use very much worse thing, but this is the reason, because it has been used, Comic Sans is burned for cartoons. And maybe this idea that was the cartoon font make the idea that is not, so I don't use too much, but I don't dislike to use. The very important thing is to use as few fonts as you can. Not put in the same page more than 2 or 3 fonts. And use in a precise way. So if you decide that the title as Bauhaus, I love Bauhaus, but make the title only Bauhaus. And then the corp is different. Because our brain, even if there is no reason of changing from one font to another, try to understand why they are different. And if it's not clear why they are different, it becomes very difficult to understand. This is a very special font. Who knew? Who knows? Ragazzi, the last line, please. It's a lesson. You will go to the bar to have a chat. Anybody knows this? This is incredible. You are at the 5th year of design, and nobody spoke you about this milestone in design. This is very important. Remember this. This is the font that has been designed at least 7 years ago, I think, by the Braille Institute of United States. You know, Braille was the guy that invented the way of reading with tact for blind people. This is the more readable character on the earth. It's the only character, the only font I really use, and has been designed in a way that makes very easy to read and to recognize, even under bad situations. This is the way, if somebody of you is myope, it takes out the glasses, you see like that. And so you know that if you don't have your glasses, it becomes difficult to. L and I are very similar. This is studied not for nice design. It's studied for readability. So whenever you will get a mail from me, will be Atkinson Drive. Is a Google font and is available all over, at least Windows and Apple Word. I must say that installing font on an Apple demonstrates that the fantasy of designer of software is infinite. It's very complicated. Hai mai provato a installare una font? Sono matti la procedura che devi entrare, uscire. Sull'iPad. Sull'iPad è una roba da pazzi. So remember, Atkinson, hyperlegible. If you look in the internet, you will find the Braille institution that will explain you everything. Now, let's go a little deeper. Legibility of a typeface is a product of its design and is related to the ability to distinguish one glyph from another when reading. That was what I was telling before. If you are myope or presby, sometimes you see and you don't understand if it's an L or an I. It becomes difficult to understand if it's a O or a Q, because they are very similar, and if they are, say, mixed up, you don't understand. So this is legibility. Legibility depends on several factors. Let's see the main factors of legibility. And please take note of this. You will have the presentation, and use it. And whenever you need the customer reads something that you write, make it the more legible possible. So one thing is the X8, the vertical height. Vertical height is this dimension. Here is low, here is bigger. And is not important. We don't need to discuss a lot to understand that the one on the right is more legible than the one on the left. Then the character width, dimension of the character. This is a small character width is more, say, elegant. I like more this, but this is more legible. Then the weight. Extremely light and heavy are more difficult to read. So stay in the middle. And the important thing is that it's not true that bold is easier to read than non-bold. It depends on what is the bold and how it's written. An important thing that is not part of this lesson, I already told you, but I will tell you when I speak about font design. What do you think about all capital letter? Is readable or not? All capital. Any idea? No. You know why? Well, sure. When you read fast, our brain remembers not only the letter, the single letter, but the shape of the word. And so if you kill the shape of the word, putting it all uppercase, it is totally unreadable. So never use all uppercase unless it's 3-4 words, not more. Sometimes you see this in Facebook. When somebody wants to stress something, they write long message, all uppercase. Very difficult to read. At the end, you are fed up because you must recognize the single letter and not the shape of the word. Then the design traits. The fact is that more complicate, more difficult is to read. So keep it simple. Stroke contrast. The contrast in strokes makes things more easy to read. This one has much more contrast, is more readable than this one. Remember, this is not a wishful thinking. This is mandatory. When you write something over a color, the contrast between the letter and the background must be, I don't say should be, must be at least 3:1. And there are tools in some presentation you will see I put some link to the tool to measure the contrast. Never less than 3:1. Legibility is killed when you kill the counters. The counters are the elements that are enclosed inside the O, for instance. If you try to make them too small, for the same reason we told before of shape, not the shape of the word, but the shape of the letter, reading, this is a beautiful font, it's Aachen black. I don't dislike this, but it's not readable. So when a font is not readable, does not mean that you should not use it, but use it if you like for a title. Use it for a caption. Don't use for the whole text because people will be fed up already. As I told you, serif or not serif makes no difference. If you go around, we have no time to see these kind of things, but there are a lot of works about readability, and it's not true. You will find hundreds of people tell you that sans serif is readable and serif is not. And this is coming from the past. In the past, when the computer had horrible screens that were big dots, when you added the serif, the big dots make the serif in dots instead of being a line. And so maybe it was true that was not good. But nowadays, with this kind of display, you don't see the dots. It's like a drawing. So it's no more true. Then, readability is another thing. Readability is, as I told you before, when somebody goes, looks, and can read. And this is a lot new of design decision. The first thing to make something readable is to do it big. When you have something important, the bigger, the better. Of course, not the bigger like this, because then there is a trade-off between readability and usage of space. But the bigger you can, the better. Told you before, never use all uppercase. Line spacing. Line spacing makes more easy to read. We don't need to study a lot to understand that this is more readable than this. But this is a problem of how our brain can recognize. We told you before that, I told you that the shape is important. If you have different shapes too near each other, it becomes more difficult to have the perception of the shape. Line length. You should never make lines that are too long. Because when you read, the most difficult things that our brain has to do is to read, and get back here. If the line is short, going down is very easy. If the line is long, you need much more attention to understand which is the next line. And so the longer, the more difficult to read. Told you before, color and contrast. Contrast must be 3:1. And you should avoid to use colors that are not giving the good contrast. Sometimes I find websites that are written in gray on black, gray on gray. This is funny because me and Paolo, we follow quite a large number of theses in the school. We have something like 20. At the beginning, people come from the thesis always with a nice format and blue text on green pages. And this is the first thing I tell to people, I say, listen, fantastic, but black and white is much better. Because, you know, when you will graduate, the commission will look at your thesis for 3 minutes. And in that 3 minutes, they must read well. They will not be, you know, here we are all designers, so we are not impressed by sexy things. We are impressed by things that are well designed. You can do a lot of nice things in formatting, but must be easy to read. KISS, you know, there's a US thing that they keep it simple, stupid. So time to time, you must have a look at what we have done, see how much is complicated, and try to make it as simple as possible. So unneeded complexity is a bad thing for usability. As I told you many times, good design is finished when you took out everything that can be taken out, not to achieve a purpose, not to put down everything that should put down. Using too many colors is an horrible thing. Sometimes you see pages with text in different colors, maximum 2, and with a reason. So I tell, think a reason, says maybe 2 or 3. May say, when I'm speaking about a danger, I write it in red. When I speak about a solution, I use green, and on the other case, I use black. Okay, 3 is okay, but 3 is the very maximum. Too many is an incredible thing. Then, I told you before, the combination of color should be the one that makes things readable. The term readability does not ask simply, can I read this, or how fast, but do you want to read it? We want, you know, we say that in the internet, fidelization is 1 click away. If you're looking to buy something in a supermarket and it's difficult, in 1 click you find another supermarket. So let's make things easy to read so that people want to read them. One of the principles of Dura typography is always legibility. Another is more than legibility. Some earned and unearned interest that gives the living energy to the page. You know, this is a very important book. I suggest you this author. Just think when you open a book, you don't know what it is, you don't know nothing about, but just looking at it, you feel that you would like to read or not. No, you feel warm, open, or badly designed. Readability can be tested. There is a lot of software around. What happens? That you give to the computer a text, and the computer will give you some score. The first one was the flash key case grade level. If you give to the system your text, 18 is a very difficult thing to read. It's only for academic. And you see, this is a reader by everybody. This is like Harry Potter. This is like Jurassic Park, just to give an idea of readability. If you give your thesis to be crunched by this system, should never be something more than 14. 14 is an easy thing to read. You don't need to study. Believe me, there are books that is worthwhile that are very complicated. If you read thermodynamics, it takes 1 hour to read 1 page. But there is reason, there's science, that's another thing. Just to give you an idea, this is a software to make readability text. So you can take your text. There are for every language. This is for English, but you find for Italian or for any language. And here you find the level. For instance, I told you it should be less than 14. So this is easy to read. Should be easy, but not too easy. Because if it's too easy, people get bored then. So it must be all the name of the game is always equilibrium. In 1 month something, in 4 days is my birthday. Okay, thank you. In 73, okay. Some months from now is Christmas. If you want to ask to somebody a present, this book for a designer is one of the best presents. It's one of the few books. It's difficult to find and it's pretty expensive, but it's one of the few books is worthwhile to buy on paper. It's very, nowadays I read everything on the computer, but this is a beautiful book. Believe me, if you have the occasion, have a look to this book. Okay, any? Yeah. No. To my opinion, you should not. You should not because it's a good thing to keep the logo different. For instance, this is a very personal opinion, and consider I am an ergonomics guy, so maybe I'm not so artistic as some other professor. But for instance, I always give the advice not to use even the colors of the logo as a palette of the website, because the logo should be something sacred, something so important that is a single. That's a good question. Any other? So have a look to this presentation and try to understand, for instance, this usability of typography could be a nice parameter to use to evaluate a website. So now we can make 10 minutes break, and then I leave you with Paolo. Okay? And next time we will make a lesson and some verification. Ok. È così, non è più bellina, è più breve. Spegnere la registrazione.
Okay, a couple of service notes. Number one, I had a couple of requests about the exams, so I'm going to remind you about how we will do the final exam. Basically, we will have 2 dates. The first one, well, I don't remember, but around the end of January and the beginning of February. You will be asked to discuss your group work. So that will be the exam. Depending on the date that you choose, and by the way, it's not mandatory, of course, for the whole group to take the exam on the same date. It's better if you can. So if you can, please do it. If not, it's not a problem. So it's not mandatory to take the exam altogether. Discussion of the group work. And I will send you by, I think, for sure by the end of the course, but I hope before that, I will send you the dates for the deliveries of the group work and the personal work. Based on past experience, more or less, it will be, the deliveries will be 3 to 5 days before the date of the exam. So if you choose like, I think it's 27th January, something like that. 30, January 30, okay. Okay, perfect. So it will be 3 to 5 days earlier. I will ask you to upload both your work, your group work, and your personal work, okay? Personal work will be part of your personal evaluation and will be, well, of course, if you got the laude, well, better than that. It's not, the CV won't have any weight in the decision. If some of the works is particularly good, it will give you the possibility to increase the personal vote, while the group vote will be, most often than not, the same for all the group members, okay? Yeah, on the exam date, you will present the group work. It will be a 20 minutes speech, more or less. We will ask you, all of the members of the group, to explain a part of the work. So the presentation will be held by all of you, or all of the members of the group. Everybody will have the chance to speak, and that's it. Okay? Yeah, if you are together, it's a group effort, so you will present together. If some member of the group needs to go to the other date, then we will redo the presentation. Okay, so no problem. If you want to, some of you ask me if they can improve on the group work. If they need to come alone, they want to do the exam by themselves later, of course, yes, why not? So, for example, in the past it happened that the group decided to take the exam on the first date, but 1 or 2 members wanted to go to the second date, and they came to the second date with a prototype that was not only desktop but also mobile. Well, of course, that's part of the evaluation. That's an added effort. So, but that's not mandatory. That's not required. Okay, I want this to be very clear. Okay. Now on to the personal work. Last week we began working on it together. I want to be very, very clear that the purpose of the personal work, once again, is for you to put your hands on the code a little bit. We don't want you to become programmers. We want you to understand what's behind the curtains. Once again, I'm getting tired of repeating this, but it's important. So, it's not allowed to present a work that comes from some online services, portfolio, Behance, whatever. No, that's not the goal of the work. Okay. I want you to script your CV or your portfolio. Why do I call them CV or portfolio? Because we know the bottom, we know the floor. I don't know your ceiling. Your ceiling is up to you. Okay, so the floor is the version that we are doing together. Start from there, from that template CV, and make it yours, just with a little bit of coding, not just simple things, like the things that we are doing together here in class. Okay? Yep. It's going to be one HTML page with the CSS and your images. I don't know, you want to put in your picture, your works, whatever. Okay, but one HTML file. Okay, or if you could, and then yeah, good assist. Why the second version, the advanced version, the portfolio version? Because I would like for you to try and add a little bit more to the basic coding. Okay. Once again, it's the purpose is for you to try. So don't be worried if it's not the most stupendous, fantastic work, graphical work that you've ever seen. I don't care about that. Okay? It's an ergonomics course, usability course. So be careful with ergonomics and usability rules that Professor Dada is teaching you. Okay? Take them into advice. Don't come with a CV or a portfolio that's written in red over black or black over red, because well, that won't be very good. Okay? But what my part of the course is all about is for you to start, get your hand on coding. So usability, ergonomics, and code it yourself. That clear? So, first version, basic version. You just take the template and put your personal information in it, okay? Maybe change the color, maybe add your picture, maybe change the icons, whatever. Advanced version, floor of the advanced version is take that same template, yeah, and play with it a little bit, okay? So maybe move the areas, move the grid. I don't know, it's up to you. Okay? Is it clear? Yeah. Both. I need both, okay? Two of them. They could be even very similar. Okay, just try. Okay? First one, once again, because I want this to be very clear at cost of repeating myself 1,000 times. So the first one, take the template and add your personal notes. By adding personal notes, you are actually tweaking with the code because you're writing inside the page, okay? So if your personal biography is longer than the 3 lines, 4 lines that we have in our example, in our template, you will need to work a little bit with the code, because if you don't, the page will just not look good. It will explode. Okay? And second version, just play with it a little bit more. Try and add some style. Now today we will take a look at other CSS options that will come very helpful for you. Will be very helpful. Will help you to change your template without actually much of an effort. Okay. So let's do it. dillo. And ok, perché non si vede? Ok. Okay, so. Last time, the last lesson, we began to go deeper into CSS and styling, and today we will focus on positioning even more than the last time. So the first thing that I want you to go through with me is what's called the CSS box model. The CSS box model is basically a very simple representation of everything that you have to take into account when styling an object, just like a div object, for example. Let's take a look at this box model, and then we will see it working live. Of course, in the middle, there's the content, whatever it is, text, images, whatever. Then it's the padding, that is the distance between the content and the border of our container element. Then we have the border, which may be from invisible, no border, no visible border, to a very wide border, like this case here. And then we have the margin, which is the distance between our object, the border of our object, and other objects outside of it. So content, padding, border, margin. We can style and play with all of these elements. Let's take a live look at it. For example, polimi.it, nessuna connessione. Chi è che ha la pecorella smarrita? Who is the goat here? The little goat. So my phone is not. No connection. But no connection. And there we go. Okay, connection restored. So box model, we were saying, let's take a look now. If you right click on a page and use inspect, this box will pop out, or depending on your setting, it will be on the side of your main page, main screen. You see here are all the CSS, and at the middle, the bottom of it, okay, there you go. there's the box model. So I'll take another object, this one here. So let's inspect this object here, and this is its box model. Okay, so this object is 485 for 268 pixels, the content. It has no padding. It has a one margin, 1 pixel border, top, left, right, bottom. No margin, okay? And everything can be inspected just like that. Every element has a box size. For example, let's take a look at this one here. This is interesting. This Scopri, okay? You see, when it's selected, it just flashes a little bit. There you go. For the whole white of the page. What does this mean? It means that its container is set to fill all of the page white. And so, if you see here, 1524. Okay, that's basically, it says to me that, okay, this box here is set, is styled to be a title, so that all of the contents will not be on the same line, will be on a new line. And it has a different margin on top and bottom. You see, when it's selected on the box, see that it gets highlighted on the page underneath, and you can see the difference. A very interesting feature when you're programming and you are trying is that you can live change these elements in Chrome. Okay, well, not here, but here. You can change the elements, for example, bottom, you see margin top, there you go. And you can change, or for example, remove it, change it, modify it. See? And it's very useful in order to do some quick test. You create a page, you preview it, and then you tweak with it. Be advised, of course, if you do any live changes in your browser, Chrome, Firefox, whatever, they won't be saved to your page. So they are just quick tests, okay? But it's useful. So box model. Let's try it with the usual test. Oh. Che cacchio succede oggi? C'è mezza tacca di connessione. Siamo in una gabbia di Faraday. Do you have cell phone reception right now? Or is it just me? I have Vodafone? No? Not so much? Yeah, it's complicated to do online examples without a connection. Let's try again. Okay, let's try again. Okay, so let's try this example and take a look at the code we are using in inline style, internal style. So the defined tag is the div. Background, light gray. We could, of course, do another color, white, black, whatever. And Okay. The width of the box is 300 pixels. Let's try and change it to 200. Okay. The border style is 15 pixel wide, solid, and color in green. Padding is equal 50, 20, and the margin is 20. So very easy. Content, padding, border, margin. Also, in particular, very important for the content, we can set and handle width and height of an element. Now let's try. Oh. Oggi va così. Okay. Okay. Now let's take a look. How we set the width of the DAV. It's 8, padding and border like we did earlier. Now the picture is 350 pixel wide, and also the container is 300 pixel wide. So we basically set a border around the image. Okay. Very slow. Super slow. Okay, so let's move to the next topic, which is the display property. The display property works very closely with the other properties that we've seen last week, which are the block and inline properties. Do you remember them? Block allows to create a new line every time we use an element that either has the block property as a default or it has been set to use the block property. An inline is, on the contrary, property that allows us to apply a style to an element but not create a new line. So basically, think at the bold or italic and stuff like that. We can, of course, override the default. We've seen the last week. We can override the display value by default, of course. And for example, let's try to do it here. So let's remove this style and run it. Now we are using a list, basically. You remember the UL, a numbered list, and LI element, list element, okay? So we have these three elements list. Now let's add the display inline element. This will basically change the default behavior for the LI element. So I will switch, when I run the script, the list will not change line, and we will of course lose the dot. Okay. Well, so what is interesting and important? Because as I told you last week, list and the number list in particular are very often, more often than not, used for menus. This way, you can create an horizontal menu, but using a list. Okay, so you need an horizontal menu, and you can use this simple code in order to remove the verticality, the new lines in the list. And then you can style the element by adding, for example, a border, so they look like, the elements will look like boxes, so menus, elements, and stuff like that. You can play with it. Let's try the opposite. So basically, we can override a span, you see here, a span tag, which by default is an inline element. If we add a display block property to the style, it will become a list, create new lines. So it will change the default behavior of the element. Okay, this is important because it makes you understand how versatile is CSS coding. You basically can do the same thing in 1,000 different ways. Okay, same thing, for example, for the A element, which is used for links. Okay, this is the opposite situation that we had earlier. So we have a list of links, but we don't want them to be on the same line. So just add a very simple display block style, and there you go. Okay, so play with overriding element. Now, if you remember, we briefly spoke about visibility a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago probably. Visibility, it is the property that allows us to render, or to force the browser to render an element or not render it, so make it hidden or make it visible. Now that we are going into detail with the display property, it can be used for to do the same thing. Well, actually not the same thing, similar thing. Now let's see the difference. So, display none. What will happen if I click on this button that will change basically the visibility of this box here to display none? So it will, well, the button says it by itself. It will remove the element. So the code is overwritten basically as it doesn't exist. Okay? The browser will render the page as if this element doesn't exist. So if we click the remove button, as you see, the two other boxes are moving to the left. Now let's try and see what happens when I use the middle box, which works on the visibility property and makes it hidden. So visibility hidden, when I hit the button, as you see, it just hides the content. Okay, so the different, the result is different. The concept is more or less the same, but it's important for you to understand the difference in when you use display when you use the display property and you use the visibility property. The display property has a physical attribute to it. It removes an element, okay? And that's why the display property can be set to inline, block, or hidden. None, sorry. Okay, so it works on the, say, physicality, well, digital physicality of the element, okay? While the other element, the other property, visibility, just works on the visibility of the element. So, when does this come to fruition? When it is useful? Sometimes you need to hide an element while your user is interacting with the page. Just hide it. Maybe think of the game or some gamification, whatever. So you hide an element, and then it pops again up. And some other time you need to remove an element. Just think at the very advanced software that we use, like FigJam or, well, Figma itself, okay, that moves element, and then you can hide an element, but the element is still there physically, okay? That's when it gets very, very useful. Right. Let's remove. Okay. So H1 hidden. I set this H1 hidden to display none. When I run the script, the second element will disappear. Okay. Then you can go through other examples. So display as the important thing, because you will use it together with other positioning attributes. The important thing to display, this display property is physicality. It works on the physical positioning of the element. Well, when I say physical, of course, it's in the digital space. Okay, now we are able to create an element, a box, content with its padding and its margin and its border, of course. But we would like to position maybe the box inside our page, or position the box in relation with other elements. So let's go to the position property. The position property, of course, well, the name says by itself, specifies the type of positioning method used for an element. It has 5 different values. Some of them used a lot, other not so much. But let's try them. And you can see, for example, this element, this green element on the right bottom hand side of the screen, which describes without very many words, but very, very effectively, very easily, what the position fixed will do to an element. It will fix it. So even if I scroll the page, it will be fixed. And now that you are taking a peek behind the curtain, you may see, for example, a lot of, the cookie bars. Remember the cookie bars in every website? Well, they're fixed, because even if you scroll until you click on them, they stay in position. They stay in the middle of your screen, they stay on the bottom of your screen, or a sticky menu. Sticky menu more often than not is in a fixed position. Okay, so let's get through them. The first one is this position static. They are not positioned in any special way. You just follow, let's say, the flow of the page. Now let's try it, and it's easier to understand. So let's remove this element, and as you see, nothing happens in this page here. Okay, so when I add this, added this static positioning to my element, it basically just follow the flow. So why adding it? You say, well, even if I don't add it, I remove it, it doesn't make any changes. So it's the very same behavior that I have when I add it. You may need to add a position static attribute and value to an element because you want it to move in a particular way when related to other elements. Okay, so maybe you want that element to be static when related to other elements. Let's go to the next one. Position relative is a very efficient way to position an element regarding its normal, the normal of the page. So basically, the measuring from top left of your page. So the example that we will see now will have this element positioned on 30 pixels left from the top left hand side of the page. Let's change this value to 130, and you see it's pretty straightforward. So position relative left 130. Now let's remove this, and you see the position is the left is not working, so they work together. Okay, so relative is yep.
Why the install? I mean, if the relative for a class is only answering to the B container, what do you have to in the install? You have to write that relative, or why not just relative?
Yeah, you can, as you remember, this is a different notation because if I don't move this, that's the name that we can easily change, then this will no. This is okay. Yeah, I get it. You can do this, but in this case, you can apply the relative, this class right there, to every element. While in this case here, you will apply them only to this. It's useful because sometimes, yeah, it's a child. Yeah, this case is very simple, so it's no use to it. But it's very useful because sometimes you can use the very same class inside different parents. So they will work. You will have two different styles maybe, but same class in different elements. Okay, let's go on. Then we have the position fixed that we already seen here in the example. Let's try it. Okay, as you see, this element on at the bottom right hand side. This is fixed there. How? By setting, like, let's try this 20. Yes. Okay, you see 120. Okay, so this element will be fixed right there, and even if I add a lot of new content to my page, so I can scroll it, you will see that my element is fixed down there. It won't scroll with the page. And I can control the positioning where it is positioned, okay, in the page. Of course, using using the position fixed and pixels as a dimension, it will be fixed to 120 pixels to the right. So even if the page is bigger or smaller, it will be fixed. Well, the name says itself. Okay. And then the last one, maybe the most important, it's the position absolute. Position absolute is, this is a bit tricky, is positioned relative to the nearest position ancestor element, okay? The fixed that we've seen earlier is positioned relative to the viewport, so to the page, basically. The absolute positioning is positioning to the nearest position ancestor, so to the parent, basically, okay? Of course, if it has no ancestor, if it has no parent, it will use the page as parent, and therefore its origin will be top 0, 0, top left. Okay. Let's try. Okay. Let's take a look at this code here. We have two different divs, div. The first one, including the second one, okay? The first one has a class that is relative, the second one and a class that is named absolute. Now let's take a look at the code of these two classes. The first one, relative, the parent is relative, and there's dimensions, okay? The second one is absolute. It means that even if we change the parent, it will be positioned at the same position of the parent in its positioning related to the parent. Okay, so let's for example change the parent and say that it is like 400, and you see that the children is not moving because it is in a position absolute, top 20, right 0. Let's try and make it like 80, 80. Okay, so it basically is this element. When I add a position absolute to an element, it is removed from the normal flow of the page, so of the various elements, and it will be attached, it will be influenced only by its parent. This is, all of this is easier done than explained, than said. When you try and play with them, you will see that it's quite easy to understand, because you try, you preview, won't work, you try again until it works. Okay, so And the last one is sticky. The last position is sticky. It is positioned on the user scroll position. So let's try it immediately. And you see? So what's the difference between fixed and sticky? Fixed is related to the viewport. They may have the very same, if I position this element in the same position of the fix that we've seen earlier in the previous example, they will look exactly the same, but they will behave differently because position sticky is user scroll related. So if the user interacts with it, as you see here, it will move and get sticky. The fixed position is related to the viewport. Whatever the user does, doesn't matter. It is always fixed in the same position, okay? Depending on what you want to achieve, what you want to obtain, and then you can use one or the other. And this example is interesting. So let's try. We want to position an element, okay, and position it in different ways. For example, on this image here, okay, top left. Let's try this example. Okay, let's see the HTML code first. So we have a div container, an image inside it, and another div which is the text, the top left text. Okay, so the container and the two elements of the content. Now the container has a position relative set. So position relative means that, remember, it is relative to the coordinates of the page. And, oh sorry, the page, of the flow of the page. So we have the image text, they add some text to an image, blah, 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 which are an H2 and which are a paragraph. They are block elements. So the normal flow of the page will be H2, block element by default, new line, paragraph, another block element by default, new line. This is the flow of the page. And then we have the div class container. The div class container has a relative position to it. So it will position itself where? Top left of the flow. If we remove the first two elements, H2 and paragraph, top left of the page, because it has no parent in the, sorry, it has no other elements in the flow of the page. So top left, 0, 0. But if we add one or two elements, it will position at 0, 0 of the two elements, okay? Then, the image is set to 100% white, auto height, which is very useful when you want to achieve a correct aspect ratio when you are working on responsive web page design. As you see, the image won't be stretched, will always look good from an aspect ratio standpoint, okay? And then it has an opacity 1.5. Okay. You can change it, just play with it, 4.7, and that's it. And now and then we have the top left element, which is a div element, and it is set to absolute, position absolute. So let's remember what position absolute means. It means that the element is positioned in an absolute way related regarding its parent. Its parent is the div class container. Okay, so our position absolute, top 8, left 16. Easy. Now I want it to be top 40, left 40. Okay, so relative, container, absolute, the child. You see, as this is simple. Now, this is the kind of examples that I think it could be useful to your work, to your CV work, because that's the kind of thing that I would like to see. Okay, you get the image, you put the image in, and maybe add a caption underneath or over it. Well, maybe this top left has a border or background, stuff like that. Nothing too programmerish. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, probably yes, but maybe. Okay, I will leave this other example to you. Well, maybe let's try the centered example, which is interesting because it basically is the very same example as the previous one, but it has a difference, which is instead of setting the top and left position in pixels, so fixed, it sets them in percentage. So position relative of the container, position absolute of the text element for the text element, which is set to top 50% and white 100%. Why 100%? Why could it be 100%? Now let's add a here you go. Order. I'm lazy, so I'm just cutting and pasting. Okay. Okay. So why? Let's take a look at what's happening here. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Because let's remove this, for example. Let's put it to 1 pixel. Okay. Now pay attention because this is interesting. Now you see that if I add pixels to the border, my border will be larger and larger. Why is that? Because remember the box model, the CSS box model. I'm telling my centered div. Remember that we are working on a div, not on the text itself, on its div. Okay. Basically, I'm saying, okay, let's put this. Basically, I'm saying, okay, position this as an absolute element. So top left of 0, 0, top left of the parent. But then put it at top 50%. Let's say, well, no, 20% I want. Okay? No, 20% no, because I want it centered. So 50%. so it will be centered vertically. Then I want to center it horizontally. So my guess is, okay, why not create a div that is 100% white? 100% is related to its parent, which is the div container, which is set to be relative and doesn't have any white information in its class. So it basically will tend to fill all of the horizontal space available. Okay? So the center div will be 100%. And I say, okay, now that you are 100%, center your text with the text align attribute text, center this one to the center of this div. Great. But then I'm adding a border, which is 10 pixels wide. And when I add a border, you see that my element just breaks the plane. Why is that happening? Because it will add 10 pixels to the left, 10 pixels to the right, no matter what. But working with percentage and pixel together most often gives weird results. Because I'm saying, you element have to be 100%, but I'm adding 10 and 10. Therefore, you are 100% plus 10 pixels and 10 pixels. Okay? So this is tricky to handle. Maybe we could do something like this, or 98%, whatever, I don't know, could work. Okay, 6% could work. Fix it, play with it. Okay. Let's take a look at the bottom right. No, it's exactly the same. Okay. So, understanding how to easily position element in a space. Couple more topics, and then you should be all set. Okay, now we have this beautiful, the ability to create a box, like this one here. Which one was? This one here, and create and add contents. But what happens when a content is too big for its container? Sometimes it happens. So we need to somehow make it readable. One of the most used attributes in order to do that is to use the CSS attribute overflow, the property overflow. Let's try it. No, before trying it, let's go to the theory. We have 4 different types, values for the overflow property. Visible, hidden, scroll, and auto. Visible is the default behavior of all elements, and that what makes your default behavior look like a box. If you create a fixed box, for example, 8 of like 100 pixels, then you add too much content, it will be bigger, longer, and it won't fit in. So that's the visible. The content renders outside the box. So if the content is more, won't fit inside the box, it will just render outside it. Hidden, it just clips the content, right? So, yeah, sometimes it's useful because maybe you just want, yeah, you just want to frame something, and whatever its dimensions are, you just want to see that small portion. Sorry, I have to take that because it's okay. Okay, let's get back to our overflow. Third one, scroll. The scroll is, well, pretty much straightforward. The box will add a scroll, a small scroll, automatically add a scroll bar to itself. The last one, it's auto. So the scroll bar appears only when the content is longer or wider than the box. Box. Now let's try. Oh yeah, that's important. The overflow property only works with block elements. Of course, not inline elements, because inline elements don't have that physical attribute to themselves, and with a specified age. Of course, if you don't set an age to the element, then it will automatically show everything, all of the content. Okay, now let's take a look at this example. Overflow set to visible, right there, and you see what happens. Now let's set the overflow to hidden, and it pretty much, it just clips it. Now let's say set it to scroll, okay, which now shows the scroll bar because it's needed, and it will show the scroll bar even if it's not needed. Okay, it's useful sometimes when you want to highlight the fact that this box is an interactive box, is a content box, is something that you want your user maybe can input, write text in. So the fact that it has scroll bars suggests a kind of affordance, suggests that the user can write in that element. But let's set it to auto. Okay, so now it's you see only the vertical scroll bar appears because there's no need for nothing else. But if I remove the text and run the script, the bars disappears. So once again, same result, scrolling box, but different intention. So you want to give the user an affordance, to add an affordance to your user interface, then use the scroll element. If you don't need that kind of affordance, then use the auto element. Okay? Last but not least, property, and is the what you need in order, the final piece of the puzzle is the float and the clear property, which are the properties that specify how an element floats in the flow of the page. Now, earlier, minutes ago, we were seeing how elements are positioned. Now we see how they float. Float means how they position themselves one against the others. As you see in this example here, float left, float right, position the two elements blue and red, to the left and to the right. Most probably, where are these float left and float right used in this page also? Take a look at this page. Where are they used? We are pretty sure. I'm pretty sure that these previous and next buttons are using a float left and float right. Okay, so it's very, very common. You will see them a lot. The float property can have four different values. Well, left and right, pretty much straightforward. They position the element to the left of the container or to the right of the container. None. Now things get a little bit weird here, creepy also sometimes. The element does not float, okay? So it will basically be rendered next to the text or elements that comes in the flow of the page, which is the default, by the way, behavior. And the last one is inherit. Inherit is important because you may want to, it's very often used when setting up menus and second, third level menus, because you want an element which is a second, maybe a second level element to be positioned and inherit the positioning and floating properties of its parent. Because you open a menu, first level, then you open a second level, and you don't want that second level to be on another part of the page, but be very, very close and move together with its parent. So often inherit is used in cases like that. Let's try. Let's take a look at these examples. You see this image here is always to the left, to the right of our page. Now let's take a look at the code. Very simple, just a paragraph with an image nested inside with the float right property set to right. Float property value right. Now let's set it to left, run it, that's it. Okay. So of course, I take a look at what happens here. When I float an element to the right, for example, the text now is in a flag position, so it's not justified, and you see you have that flag type of this position. But if you float to the left, the element will have no margin to it. So you have to work on the margin if you don't want the page to look like this. So add the margin, add the padding, whatever. You can add the margin to the image, or you can add the margin to a paragraph that contains the text so that you can work on them. Well, now let's take another look at the float left done the right way. Yep.
The list of styles, which one on the right, the other? The one on top or the one?
They are cascading. So the last one override the previous one. There's a way we will see it in minutes.
The last one override
the first one, yeah.
Because I tried to use the float
Yeah.
and then you go
Yeah.
so the
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. Positioning and floating work together, but they may very well end up conflicting one with the other. So be very careful when using the... Yeah. let's take a look at this one here, which is a very simple example of what we did earlier. But you see here, there's a little margin. It looks much better than the version I did minutes ago, because here I only set up the float to the left, but being the image tag inside, so a child to the paragraph, to the P tag, well, it doesn't have any information about how to be positioned. But right there, in the other example, you see we will set the margin right to 15, and then you will have this little margin there. Let's try and remove it, and you see that's the situation we had earlier. Okay. In the other example, of course, the margin was set to left, was margin left 15. So when I use the float right, then the margin kicks in, and you have this margin there. If you float to the left, the margin is on the wrong side. No float. The float is very simple to understand, because it will just follow the flow of the page. So you see this image is right there. If you have used Word, Microsoft Word or whatever text editor, that's basically the same thing. So you have the same behavior. Sometimes you need to have this kind of look sometimes. But now the things get interesting, and we will have to try. We want to try to float one element next to the other. Let's try it live. There you go. Div number 1, div number 2, div number 3, red, yellow, and green. Let's take a look. They have pretty straightforward and simple code. Div, class 1, class 2, class 3. Now let's take a look, and oh well, they are all redefined by the main div class. So it redefines the div left with a float left and a padding 15 pixels. Okay, so we want to maybe add the margin 15 pixels also. Okay, maybe margin right. Okay, and but what if well, this behavior here in this example is easy, because we redefine all the div. But if in a complex page we may not be able to use the tag redefining class, therefore we will need to add this float left property to all of our classes. Is that clear? So let's remove this here. Let's add to the first one. Run it. You see, so the first one, the red one, now has, of course, a position, a floating position to the left. So it's the let's take a look at the code again. H2 inline, block element by default, new line, paragraph, block element by default, so new line, first div, div, so div1, class div1, red background, float left, where will it hook itself? Where it will position itself? The first available position on the left of the flow of the page. If I remove the two elements, the H2 and the paragraph, there you go. First element of the page, top left, 0, 0. The other two elements do not have any information about space or positioning, whatever, so they just position themselves with the default behavior. The default behavior, let's check it out, is none. The element does not flow, okay? It will be just displayed when it occurs in the flow of the page, okay, without any styling information. Now, let's add to the third one, for example, float left and the padding. And you see now, well, and the margin also. Well, let's remove the margin. It's not useful in this example. Okay, so what is happening here? It is floating, it floats to the left, and again follow the flow of the page. So first one, the red one, floats to the left. Second one, no floating information, just occupies the whole page. Third one, float to the left. So it will just like lock to the previous element that it finds. Let's add this to the yellow one. And there you go, 1, 2, 3. Now, let's try another right somewhere. See what happens? So I'm basically overwriting the natural flow of the page because the second DAV, in terms of HTML code, is now being floated to the right. Okay? So it does float, it's very important to understand. Floating can override the code order, the HTML code order. Because these elements will lock themselves like magnets to the first element they find that follow the same rules that they follow. So if I say, if I add a float right to the second element of these three elements, it will look for the previous element that has the same behavior and lock to it. Here there's no element, therefore it will lock to the page, to the parent, which is the page in this case. Okay? Let's try and add the fourth one. Right there, the div4. The div4 class. Run, of course it doesn't have any style. Let's make it okay, float left, so it will lock itself like a magnet to the previous one. But now let's try and add a change, another right. Okay? It will attach itself to the first element with the same floating or a positioning, sorry, no, wrong choice of word, with the same floating property. So let's try this. Move the div4 on top. You see what happens? Now yellow and cyan are inverted. This behavior is very important. If you don't get this behavior, it will be tough. So pay attention. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 3 are set to float left. So if 1 will float to the left and lock itself to the page border because it has no previous element with the same floating value left. div2 is set to right, so it will search as a magnet the first element with the right value to the floating property and lock to it. There's no other float right element, therefore it will lock to the page border, to the right hand side page border. div3, the green one, float left. Does it have a previous element, a previous div which is set to float left? Yes, it does. It is the red one, div1. So it will lock in magnet to it, lock to it. div4, we do the same with the right. Now, if I want to swap div4 and div2, I will have to change the order of the HTML. Okay? Is this clear? Yeah, I need for you to acknowledge this. Like that, yes? Is it clear? Yes? Whatever? Yes? No? Yes? Bubble heads, I want bubble heads. Okay? If you don't understand this is it. This is positioning HTML. Okay? So you gotta get this one. HTML works together with CSS. CSS can overwrite HTML, but it has to work on HTML rules. Okay? Positioning, on the other end, using position, like you tried to do before, follow a different path. So if you try to do this very same positioning with the center right that we tried earlier, it will be much more difficult. You can do that, not recommended, but it will rely exclusively on the CSS, not on the HTML. Okay? And finally, we have the inherit element. Let's take a look. Well, no, we don't know to take. You need to take a look. It's just inherit the parent behavior. So that's it. I think we should have all of them. No, we don't have all of them. No. We have two more elements here, two more properties, and then we have finished. So, next one is the CSS align, horizontal and vertical. Aligning element relies heavily on margins. Okay, so you can easily, in this example, center an element by using margins. Remember the CSS box model? Margins are pretty easy to align. But, and that's even easier, you can use the text align, for example, property, which centers the property, the text itself. So as you see in this example here, pretty simple. text align, center. It is the same thing that we did earlier by working with margin, but using an automatic, an easy and automatic property. We could also use the center to center an element that is not a text, for example, an image. Okay, how do we do that? We change the image to a block element, of course, because we need to, in order to apply a positioning style to an element, it has to be a block element. If it's an inline element, we cannot add any space information to it. So we add, as you see in this example, we add the display block. We change the default behavior for the image. If you don't change the default behavior for the image, which is inline, you will not be able to position it in this way. And then we set the margins to auto, for example. Let's try this example. You see, remove the code and run it. Default positioning, it's image. Okay, now let's add the code. Display block, it makes this image a space, gives spatial information to the tag, to the image tag. And then we make margin left and margin right auto. Auto, as we seen earlier, position itself in an automatic way. You can use the positioning, so you can mix and match everything we learned so far. So for example, let's take a look at this box here, this green box here. It will use position absolute. Remember the position absolute, which is the position of the element referring to the page or the flow of the page. So 0, 0, top left in case of no other elements, or previous inline element. And then we can position it accordingly. And then there are a lot of other elements. One important thing that I want to show you is what's called the clear fix hack. Basically, the clear fix is an element that is used in order to fix a problem that we can see in this example here. It allows us, let's take a look at the example because it's easier to explain. And let's take a look at this code here. So, it's a bit complicated. So we have the AV container with an image inside and the text. We have seen same example that we've seen earlier, nothing new. But this image is bigger, so we could use either the overflow property that we've seen earlier, so that the box will have scroll bars, but it's not as good. We want the image to be shown, to be seen, and not override. If I would use an overflow auto or scroll here, the image would only be visible for a small portion. So that's not the case. Now, how can I obtain this look here, the second one? We can obtain it by using this clearfix hack. We create a class named clearfix. It's something that all programmers do. Every framework, every front-end framework has a clearfix class, but because it's very, very useful. Now let's remove it for a moment and run the script. You see, there's the very bad look that we want to avoid. So now let's take a look at this clear fix element. Okay, it basically uses 3 elements. It says, okay, content none, it's empty. Clear, it's a command that basically remove all of the spatial information of the previous inherited from the previous element, and then we add a display table, which is another. We didn't see it, but it's another value for the display property. Basically, using this very simple code, I won't go into detail, but I wanted just to show you because it's very common to use or hear a programmer, a front-end programmer, talk about the clear fix hack. Clear fix hack basically allows you to clean up a visibility problem, let's say, and restore the flow of the page. So when you apply this class, the box will basically allow the element to be seen and then reset, so that you can move on with the page. But that was just something that I wanted to show you. Really, the last one, it's the important property. Now, let's be, there you go. And this is something that you use a lot because it's just like everything is saved by the important rule. Basically, the important rule says that one property cannot be overwritten by following code. Yeah. So important with the exclamation dot and important basically will override all of the previous styling and will tell the following everything. So let's take a look here. Okay, we have a very simple 3 paragraphs. Okay, this is a text paragraph, some text in a paragraph. The first one is as a my class to it. The third one uses an ID class with my ID. Take a look at them. My ID uses the ID handler, remember, and says background blue. My class uses a background gray. But then there's a P, a paragraph, red, that redefines with the important, redefines everything else. So basically everything above and below is overwritten. Now, okay, if I remove the important rule, you see that now the first one is red because it's just a paragraph, just a P. Okay, so it will follow the rule that redefines the HTML P element tag. The second one uses a custom class, my class, and is gray. The third one uses a ID class, which is set to blue. Okay, so custom class overrides the paragraph, ID class overrides the paragraph. But if I add an important rule to the paragraph 1, that rule will not allow any of this to happen. So that rule will be applied to everything, of course, everything related to that element. Okay? And with this, I think we can wrap the day up. So, next week, it's an important one. Let's take a look at the calendar. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 lessons left because the 19th of December is thesis day, so there's no lesson. So we have 4 lessons left. Next week, usual format, theory, and then reviews. I will set up the calendars. This time I will set up them correctly. And we will have full review of your work, of your redesign work so far. You should have architecture information ready, wireframing ready, more or less, for the main tasks that you have chosen in the analysis part. Okay? If you have further steps, no problem. That's good. That's great. But we will review architecture information and wireframing, basically. That's next lesson. So theory and reviews. 28, Professor Dalda will be away, so we will wrap up the HTML part with the hands-on CV together. So we will go on with the example and write the CV together, and I will review half groups, more or less, so 10 groups. Then we set up a calendar also. Well, if you're ready, you can do another review. That will be a step forward basically. So design systems, high fidelity prototypes, whatever you will have ready. Lesson 5 December, theory, Professor Dadda, reviews again. Last lesson, a little bit of theory, personal CV reviews, and final review for the group work. So lots of review in the next 3 lessons. Okay. Good. Thank you.